Alright, beer's cold. Good. Because this is one of those stories that sounds crazy until you've heard the wind drag its nails across a Tennessee hollow at 2 in the morning. My name's Arthur Whitaker. I haul freight, Seattle boy originally, but I rent a little house outside Adamsville, McNairy County. Cheap, quiet, that was the pitch anyway. I hunt some when the season's right. Nothing serious. Mostly whitetail, sometimes squirrel with a 22 for the skillet. You spend enough nights in truck stops and gravel pull-offs. You collect stories. I'd heard the campfire once about the Tennessee wildman. Since I started running loads through the south. Big, hairy, mean, whistling like a man who forgot how human throats work. Likes to throw rocks, stings bad. Red eyes like road flares in the tree line. I didn't buy any of it until this fall. It started early October, windy days, leaves moving sideways, the kind of gusts that gum the ditches with wet oak and poplar. The place I rent is set back off a county road, 1 acre cut from the woods, a trailer pad poured sometime in the 80s with a stick-built cabin on it now. It's tired but clean, front porch, 2 steps, screen door with a broken spring, a shed out back full of the last guy's junk, coffee cans of screws, a busted miter saw, and a deer gambrel hooked to the rafters. I liked it, felt honest. First night, I knew something was off. I was coming off a 3-day run, parked my rig at the storage lot, drove the pickup home, and found my garbage can on its side, and the lid 20 feet away in the weeds. Raccoons, party too. Except this lid looked bent, not pried, bent, like someone had pressed the center down with both hands till the metal folded. I chalked it up to a bad weld and a critter with ambition. I was thinking about eggs, how many I had left when I heard the whistle. It wasn't a bird, it wasn't a person either, not quite. It came down from the tree line across the yard, where the cut grass ends and the deer trails start. A long, slow note, like a man calling a dog that doesn't belong to him. The wind shoved through right after and dragged the tail of it across the house. I stood still, with the truck door open, my keys in my fist, and listened. The way you do when you aren't sure you're actually hearing what you think you're hearing. Then a second whistle, farther left, same pitch, same weird human but not tone. The hair on my arm stood up. Somewhere behind both notes, I swear I heard breathing. Like it was close enough to fog glass if there had been any. I did what any idiot who believes in nothing does. I laughed at myself, slammed the door, and went inside like a stubborn goat. I put coffee on just to fill the place with normal smells. 10 minutes later, something hit the side of the house hard enough that a picture frame rattled. Not metal on metal, stone on siding. I said, "You have got to be kidding me," and grabbed a shotgun from the corner, old 12-gauge pump, reliable as guilt, and stepped onto the porch. The porch light threw a little circle on the yard. Past it was wind and dark. My gravel driveway shone like the back of a fish where the light caught it. The tree line stayed black. I worked the action once, loud on purpose. The wind gave me an answer, just wind, or so I told myself. And then it stepped out, not all the way, half, a suggestion, like when you see a driver's face through a windshield glare and you can't swear what color their eyes are. Tall. I could see the shoulder first, the left side like someone wearing a shaggy coat too big for him. It pivoted away giving me the slope of the back, the dome of a head, and I swear a hand that wasn't a hand. The fingers looked long, even that far out, like the skeleton of a leaf when the green is gone. The porch light kissed the hair and made it look rust at the ends. The smell hit me next, sweet, rotten, and musky, like a den that's seen too many summers. I told myself it was a bear. I wanted it to be a bear. I know bears. Bears don't whistle. The thing lifted its head. Two eyes shone back, sick red, like the brake lights you see through fog. It didn't blink. The wind dragged across my face and brought that whistle again, close enough it felt like it brushed my ear. I brought the shotgun up and the creature dropped back into the dark, like it'd never been there. No sound of leaves, no snapping branch, nothing but the wind and my own breathing. That was the first night. I didn't tell anyone. I slept with my boots by the bed and the shotgun leaned against the nightstand. Slept is a generous word. Next day, I did the human thing, went to town, brought bigger garbage cans with clamped lids and a motion light that was supposed to be bright enough to tame a deer. I put the light at the corner of the porch, one of the shed, and another big box store special over the driveway. I set them so they should catch anything bigger than a fox. I also bought a handful of river stones from the garden center, flat, heavy, and lined them on the porch rail. Don't ask me why, it felt like a dare back at the tree line. My neighbor Hank came by about 5, carrier of every rumor within 10 miles. 50-ish, built like he was poured into his denim. "You hear that whistling last night?" he asked, like he was asking if I'd seen the mail run. I said no because truth sounded crazy, and he grinned without humor. "Don't sweat it none," he said. "You're new. Fall Bright's old boys out, coyotes talking, fox scream like a woman dying. You will learn." Then he squinted at the trees and added, "Don't leave your meat on the gambrel out back. Something out there likes venison more than we do." "What's something?" I asked, casual. He spit in the grass and said nothing. When he left, he told me if I called the sheriff about weirdness, they'd send Deputy Coffee, and Deputy Coffee thought everything was panthers because his granddaddy saw one in 58 that no one else did. I lasted 2 nights without more weirds. That third wind rattled night. I was halfway through a bowl of chili when the shed light exploded and I heard the gambrel creak, the sound of rope underweight. I hadn't hung anything, but my heart didn't care about details. I flicked the porch light and the yard turned into a shallow stage. I stepped out with the shotgun and felt stupid in my own skin. The shed door was ajar, not all the way, just enough for dark to leak out. Something moved inside. The motion light painted a shag of hair and a pale stripe of knuckles. There was a long, dragging sound, and then the door pushed wide like something inside forgot what hinges were. The creature ducked out, not all the way upright, broad shoulders, scraping old nails. It had the deer gambrel in one hand, rope and hook, and a ragged deer hide in the other like a towel. Except the hide wasn't mine. I hadn't put one there. It had ripped the hide of something out there and brought it inside like a robber changing clothes. It looked at me. Without the trees to lie for it, the thing was just wrong. 7 feet, maybe more, with legs bent not like a man's and not like an ape's either, more like a sprinter just before the gun. Hair matted with burrs and leaves, long patches missing like old scars. The face? I hate thinking about the face. Not a snout, but not flat either. A forward pushed mouth, split lip, teeth too square to be dog and too long to be comfortable. The eyes sat deep like they were hiding from the rest of it. Its chest rose and fell quick, and every breath came with that wet animal sweetness that wanted to turn my stomach. I pumped the shotgun again. Habit, fear, theater. And it smiled. Or my brain made it smile. The upper lip lifted, the teeth showed, and it made a sound like a laugh, done through a cracked recorder. I yelled without words and fired into the dirt by its feet. It didn't jump. It cocked its head and took 2 steps forward. That old bait of river, stones on the rail flashed in my thinking. God knows why. I grabbed one and threw it, hard. It caught the rock without looking, snagged it mid-air with those 2 long fingers, rolled it in its palm like a man feeling the weight of a good baseball, and threw it back. It hit my porch post hard enough to finish the crack that been living there for years. The post shuddered. Somewhere in the woods across the road, something big moved in parallel, like I'd just woken up the other half of a bad idea. Headlights rolled up. Then Hank's beat up Ford, God bless his bad timing. He must have seen my lights cut the air wrong from his place. He braked hard, door opened before the truck stopped, lever action in his hand. "Arthur!" he yelled. The creature turned its face toward the sound like a dog hearing its name. Hank saw it, and everything good in his face dropped through his boots. He shouldered up and fired before he even told himself he'd decided to. I did the same because that's what you do when your neighbor fires at your nightmare. The shots tore the night into fabric strips. The creature flinched when Hank's round hit. First time I'd seen it act like anything I know, and it went low, fast. Its hand lashed out like it thought the door had insulted it, and here's the part that holds shape in my bad dreams. It ripped the door clean off the top hinge, just tore it. Screws bent, metal shrieked, wood split like a cracked plate. It threw the door sideways and hit the side of the shed so hard the shed shuddered forward a couple inches on the blocks. Then it ran, not away into the dark like a deer takes a line. This was sideways, circling us, testing, tailing its own bad thoughts. Hank put 2 more rounds where he thought it'd be, and the woods answered with silence so loud you could hear the wet in your own mouth. My ears sang. The motion light gave up and flicked off and back on in that sticky way cheap wiring does under adrenaline. The thing made one of those whistles again, closer than it had any right to be, and the sound came from behind Hank. I yelled and pulled him aside just as a rock bigger than my 2 fists smashed into Hank's truck windshield and spider-webbed it like a winter pond. He swore and hunkered, bleeding a little where the glass split. He didn't run. He threw himself up behind my porch rail and worked that lever like he'd been born doing it. I called the sheriff then, because I'm not proud enough to die over a myth. It rang, and when I got someone, they said coffee'd be 20 minutes, maybe more, because he was on a livestock call. They also told me if it was a bear, to get inside and make noise. I said it wasn't a bear, and the dispatcher did not say wildman, but the silence between us had the shape of that word. We held there, 2 men behind cheap wood with guns, and the thing circled where the cedars make a wall. You could hear it even when you couldn't see it, because the wind was never enough to make branches move like that. Every once in a while, it dropped, stopped, and breathed, just loud enough to remind us it could. Hank whispered, "Don't go into the trees. That's church for him." He had that tone men get when they're saying something they swore they'd never say out loud. I said, "You seen it before?" And he said nothing, but his shoulders were talking. Finally, the lights from Coffee's cruiser came down the road slow, like he didn't want to wake anything old. The creature must have seen them too. The whistling cut off, the breathing shrank, and then the night was just night again. No insult meant. Coffee pulled in, took one look at the door twisted on the ground like a busted elbow and the windshield on Hank's Ford, and rolled down vandalism, because he needed something civilized to call it. He walked the tree line with his flashlight and told us he found deer tracks, Coyote's cat, and one print that could have been a bear if bears wore size 30 socks. He said panthers have been seen, you know, and they scream like a woman. Hank nodded, like he was listening to a weather report he couldn't change. Coffee took a photo of the bent garbage lid and said raccoons can be strong. I almost laughed. That was the second encounter. That's when annoying turned into personal. If you've never had something lift its lip at you with a human idea behind its eyes, you can't know what I mean. It wasn't hungry in the way a bear is hungry. It was hungry for the wrong thing. If you've ever thrown a stick for a dog and watched him learn your rhythm and start moving before your arm does, that was the intelligence of it, not reason, pattern. It didn't stop after Coffee left. It didn't come in hot again for a few days. But it didn't stop. Rocks on the roof, slow and mean, the whistle at strange hours, always that same pitch, like it was trying to tune me. One night, he dragged a heavy chain across the driveway for 20 minutes, back and forth, metal teeth on gravel, patient as a prison guard on half pay. I called a friend from the range, Jessa. She lives closer to Savannah than Adamsville, hunts more hogs than deer and wears a 357 like jewelry. I figured if this was going to turn into a war with something I didn't understand, I wanted one more person who wouldn't freeze. Jessa came over with a thermos and a look that said she didn't think I was crazy yet, but you could be convinced. Hank brought coffee and an old floodlight, and his cousin, Rooster, who dropped out of high school but could track spilled water uphill. We set up like four idiots who think they're the first to ever be idiots. Floodlight on a long extension cord, pointed into the cedars, my truck backed up with the high beams aimed where the slope starts, chains on the porch that we didn't sit in, and guns we all agreed we wouldn't use unless it came for one of us. Jessa had her wheel gun and the short 12 gauge. Hank his lever, me with the pump, Rooster with a crossbow because of course he did. It waited until the wind had a voice again because it was a bully and bullies like a stage. Somewhere after midnight, late enough that coffee tastes like regret, Jessa stiffed and cut her eyes left. The floodlight hummed, bugs suicided into it, and between us and the trees the air went thinner, like the world inhaled and held it. "I smell it," she whispered. "Dead wet dog and pennies." She wasn't wrong. It was like the woods had been left out on the counter. We heard the thump of something landing on the shed roof. Then claws. No other word. scratching at the tar paper. Rooster, God love him, raised the crossbow a little and breathed like a man who discovered his own throat. I flicked the floodlight switch to sweep it. Nothing on the roof. The scratching kept going in the dark, like the sound had forgotten to stay with the thing. The whistle came again, left side of the yard this time, not the shed. Two, Hank said flat. There's two. His voice betrayed nothing but his knees told the truth in the way they said. I felt it before I saw it, a weight to the dark, like something tall had leaned over the world. Then it stepped into the floodlight, and that was a mistake, because it saw us seeing it, and it liked that too much. Up close with real light, it was worse. The hair wasn't brown on black so much as the color of tree bark soaked through, and it hung in wet cords along the chest, leaving pale skin exposed in places. The skin looked wrong on a thing like that, too hairless, too human, like it had been burned a long time ago and healed in the shape of a man. The mouth pulled back, and for a second I thought it had tusks, but they were just teeth, broken and crowded, the kind that crack bone by thinking about it. The hands? Christ, the hands could have played a piano. It took one step into the light and reached for the shed door it had hurt before. It ran those two long fingers down the splinter like it was reading Braille, and then, slow as a man showing off, it sunk them into the wood and ripped clean, top to bottom, the way you tear a paper bag. That sound will be with me when I'm old. Wood fiber snapping like a crowd breaking. Jessa fired the shotgun, not at it but over it, and the blast slapped the night hard enough to move air. The other one, remember the roof? Moved then. The roof gave under it, and whatever was on the top slid down the back and landed in the leaves with a grunt. For a heartbeat, I thought there were three, but no. Two was enough to feel like more. The one by the shed laughed again, the broken recorder sound. Then it threw the door half it was holding at the floodlight. The light exploded, and with it went the only courage electricity ever bought. Darkness fell like an attic door slamming. I grabbed the switch to bring the truck high beams up, and it was too slow and too loud, and I could feel it closing distance in the dark, the way you feel thunder coming that belongs to you alone. I didn't think. I threw one of those river stones. Crazy, right? Except it had thrown one at Hank's truck, and some part of me wanted to say, I can play that game. The rock left my hand without me, and I heard it smack something solid. The laugh cut off, a breath like a drunk deciding to swing. Arthur, down! Jessa yelled and yanked me sideways as something, claws or broken nails or just speed, swept through where my head had been a blink ago. Her 357 bellowed next. The blast so close I saw the muzzle flash within my eyelids closed. The thing backed off 2 steps and roared, not a howl, not a scream, a noise that made you want to crawl under something you couldn't name. Headlights. I got the truck lights on. The beams hit the yard like a stage cue, and the thing staggered in it. Pupils needling down in those bad eyes. Hank put a round center mass, not a kill on anything that weird, but enough to say hello. It lurched, and for the first time it looked unsure. The other one was pacing in the cedars, pissed off and indecisive, the way a gambler gets when the dice go cold. Then Rooster did the dumb brave thing. He stepped off the porch into the light, crossbow up, and yelled, "Go on," like he was chasing a dog out of the trash. The creature pivoted toward him with a speed that should break ankles. I don't remember deciding, I just moved. I shouldered into Rooster and pushed him behind the old lawnmower. The creature hit the mower instead of him, hit it with both hands and ripped the bag and part of the handle clean off, like tearing the arm from a plastic toy. The bag floated like a jellyfish in the high beams, lawn trash glittering like confetti in the wind. We fired together, shotgun, lever, revolver, and I think one of us hit its shoulder because a glossy dark thing spattered and the arm dropped a couple inches like it went dead. It turned that face to me and I knew in a very practical way that if it decided to end me now, there wouldn't be much I could do, but to hope it preferred the game to the prize. Sirens again, not coffee this time. 2 cruisers and the volunteers' old Tahoe. Lights off till the last second because even cops keep some respect for superstition. The second creature melted into the trees at the first siren note. The one in the beams did something that made me colder than anything else that night. It looked at the blue bar light, then back at me, then back at the trees, and it calculated. You can tell when a thing is doing math. It chose the trees. It vanished. Not gone like magic, gone like anything with legs that knows where the holes are. The sheriff, older, meaner than coffee, in the way one becomes after you've buried a few friends, stepped out slow and held his left hand out like he was calming horses, his right on his weapon. He looked at the shed door on the ground and the claw lines on the wood and didn't write vandalism. He didn't write anything for a long time. We walked the woods with 3 lights and a volunteer who had a thermal scope he bought with divorce money. We found blood, a splash on the mower, a drip line into the cedars, and then nothing, like the ground had learned to lie for it. We found a place 50 yards in where 2 small cedars had their bark stripped in long vertical fingers, and under that a nest of leaves and woven vine, bones tucked into the weave like a child's charms, deer mostly, a dog skull, maybe, old and white, a rusted buckle, a woman's beret, plastic and sun brittle and wrong, which I try not to think about. The sheriff said, and this is as much as you will get out of him on this topic, we got folks poaching, we got folks dumping dead dogs, we got cats that ain't supposed to be here. Don't you go shooting ghosts in the country, Mr. Whitaker. You keep a light on. Then he looked into the trees like he was listening for something he hadn't heard in a long time, and added, and if you hear whistling that ain't attached to lips, go inside. I didn't sleep. The wind came up about 4 and pressed itself around the house like a big guy trying to find a comfortable way to lean without touching you. Dawn came without permission and brought with it the tire that lives in your bones after you don't die. Hank came by around noon with plywood and a handful of screws, and we fixed the door. He didn't talk much. Rooster swept more guts off the gravel and said he was keeping a piece of the ripped bag for the story. Jessa walked the property line with me and we set up a line of old soda cans with rocks in them, low-tech triple arms. We ran fishing line in a web across the shed entrance, high enough to tangle but not enough to kill, because none of us wanted to find out what killing one of those would bring to the door. We put up more lights. I set 2 flares on the porch rail, ready to thump. I also dragged an air horn from the rig, the big kind, and ran a line so I could hit it from inside the living room. call it redneck engineering if you like. It made me feel like I had teeth. That night was the worst because waiting is worse than anything. The wind went quiet for a few hours and the silence stung in my ears. Jessa stayed until 10 and then told me I should come crash on her couch. I told her I wouldn't run from my own lease. She said stubborn looks good on me until it buries me. We laughed because we didn't want to hear ourselves. Around midnight the cans rattled. Not all, just the far left of the line, like something low and quick moved through. I stood, the horn line in my hand, shotgun ready without me thinking it. The whistle came, soft, and this is the part I hate telling. Behind it came a voice that sounded like mine, but wrong, saying, "Hey Arthur." Not close enough to be in the yard, far enough to pretend to be brave. Then the whistle again, more insistive, like it was asking me to be polite and step outside because company had come. I hit the air horn. It blasted the yard and the trees and probably a few possums into next week. Silence. Then from deep in the cedars the scream. People talk about panthers screaming like women. Maybe they do. This wasn't that. This was old and upset about the law being broken. It shook the window glass. I held the horn for a long count of 10 until the compressor choked. And when it died, I lit the flares and threw them into arcs into the yard. Bright magnesium hissing and spitting sparks into the grass. Light changed the mat again. In that ugly sun white, I saw them both, not at the edge but beyond it, heads low, eyes doing that mean glow thing. The one with wounded shoulder held it tight to its chest, like a sulking child. The other paced. I yelled without words, not because I thought it mattered, but because people make noise when they want to prove to themselves they're still here. They didn't come. The flares ate themselves down to stubs and the smell of them made the yard feel like a war nobody had won. The wind came back up and shouldered through the trees, and the cedars tossed their heads like horses. When the last flare died, the night didn't fill with them again. They were gone. Gone like they had a meeting somewhere they were late to. I stood there with a dead horn and my breath fogging the glass and felt 13 years old and small. I didn't see them again after that. Not that night, not for the rest of October. The cans rattled once or twice and I found prints that might have been them if you squinted, but no eyes, no whistle. When the first hard frost came, the woods got crisp and honest again. By Thanksgiving, I could walk to the shed without my back pretending to sprout eyes. Jessa says they were passing through, following the deer herds as the acorns ran out. Hank says they never really leave. They just get bored of you and bother someone else until you become interesting again. Rooster says I should keep the ripped mower bag nailed to the wall, like a talisman. I did not do that. I put the house on the market anyway, renter's lease be damned. I told the owner I'd cover the last month if he could find someone else. He asked why. I told him the foundation had a hairline crack and I didn't like the way the wind sounded in the cedars. He said he understood more than I knew. We didn't shake hands. So that's it. That's my beer-soaked confession. The part where you ask me if I believe in the Tennessee Wildman now. I believe in something that lives in the places we cut out of our maps when we print them small. I believe in whistling that doesn't need lips. I believe in hands that can rip a door, that's older than me off its hinge like it's a curtain. And I believe most of all that some things look at us and do math, and on some nights they decide we are not worth the trouble. That's a mercy I don't know that we deserve. Do I think we handled it right? We didn't run and we didn't chase. We made light where there wasn't any, and we made noise. And we stood up for each other when standing up meant you might lose skin. If there's a rule for dealing with something that remembers what you yelled 3 nights ago, maybe that's it. Don't go into the trees. Don't give it the church it wants. And when the wind starts fingering the porch rail in the wrong key, close the door, friend. Close the door and keep something with teeth within reach.